The deportations and raids have begun in downtown Los Angeles. No, I'm not talking about today. This is February 1931 at La Placita Olvera. It was the site of the first major federal attempt to repatriate Mexican Americans. It was part of a program started under Herbert Hoover in 1929. And between 1929 and 1936, over 1 million Mexicans, some of whom had never set foot in Mexico before in their lives, were put on trains and buses funded by the federal government and by local counties and sent to Mexico, where they mostly faced poverty. In fact, at one point, the Mexican government called for the United States to stop the propaganda that they were using with air horns and flyers. They were telling Mexicans in the United States that fertile land and farms waited for them back in the homeland. 400,000 Californians were removed. Federal troops were used to remove them in many cases, and usually not at the request of the state of California. Now, in those days, it was the Department of Labor that was in charge of things like immigration. INS hadn't come onto the scene yet. That would happen after the war years. The number of articles on this is absolutely endless, so I'm just showing a sampling in the background. But there are photos of huge numbers of Mexican families at train stations being torn apart and saying goodbye to their loved ones, many of whom they would never see again. Schools showed signs of reduced enrollment, especially in this school in Laverne, which saw numbers drop significantly after Mexican families either were deported or were too scared to enroll their children in school. But where were the protests? There are no articles of regular Americans protesting the forcible removal of Mexicans. In fact, most Americans were in favor of it. A lot of this was due to the same fears that we have today about Mexicans taking white jobs, and also about the cultural level of the United States. Those were the rationales. Most of the deportations ended by 1936, though they trickled into the war years. And then, of course, it's happening again today. Today, though, we are seeing news broadcasts of regular people going out into the streets, protesting, and standing up for their neighbors, saying, "Not in my name." That was the news in 1931.